Hi, I'm Shaul. In this video I would like to address a request made by one of the viewers of this channel. He asked me to give you a crash course about MTF charts, how to read them, how to interpret them, and what we can learn from them in a practical sense. MTF charts provide us with a rich source of information about a lens. Of course, they do not replace the need to go over a lot of images shot with a certain lens to get the feel for what the lens draws like. Nevertheless, MTF charts, even in the rather simplified form lens manufacturers provide us with the ones they publish, can teach us quite a lot about lens, its style of rendering, its flaws, and what we can expect from it. MTF, or modulation transfer function, comprises contrast measurements. We try to take photographs of white and black lines, adjacent ones, that go thinner and thinner. The thinner the line, the higher the frequency, the spatial frequency. And typically, the higher the frequency, the lower the contrast that is captured by the lens. Contrast is expressed as a normalized expression. It's the maximum brightness captured minus the minimum brightness captured in that small area of the image, divided by the maximum brightness plus the minimum brightness. What we get is a value between 0, which means white and black assume the same shade of gray, and there is no contrast between them, and 1. In that case, the difference between the brightness of white lines and the brightness of black lines equals their sum. So the ratio between them, between the difference and the sum, is exactly 1. In a typically simplified MTF chart, as published by lens manufacturers, this measurement is done repeatedly across a line that goes from the center of the image to the corner. So what you get is a representation of contrast level at different positions in the projected image circle. Measurements are made at 30 line pairs per millimeter, which represent the resolution frequency. It's quite a high frequency that describes the lens's ability to distinguish between bright and dark areas of very small edges or fine details, and at 10 lines per millimeter that describe the general contrast, the overall contrast lens can confer. To make it even more complex, there are two measurements made at each frequency across two axes. The sagittal axis that goes from the center to the corner, and the meridional or tangential axis that is perpendicular to the sagittal axis. So it describes the contrast in circles that are parallel to the edges of the projected image circle. So a full MTF chart is comprised of 4 different lines. The behavior of these lines, their height, and how their height changes at different distances from the center of the projected image circle, can teach us a lot about different characteristics of the lens that we might see when we look at photographs. In a perfect lens, or shall we say in a perfect lens in the engineering sense, all 4 lines will run at the very top of the chart. Like in this MTF chart made for the Viltrox 35mm f1.2 at f8. However, this type of performance is rarely achieved, especially in the published MTF charts that are typically taken at the maximum aperture of a lens, where its performance is slightly worse, or usually a lot worse. Again, I'm referring to the engineering sense of lens design, not to the aesthetic representation of what the lens renders like, what the images made with it look like. So let's try to run some diagnostics on a lens based on that MTF chart taken at the widest aperture. The first phenomenon I would like to address is a general depression of the contrast line, or the top pair of lines. This is typical of slightly older lenses. The chart you see on the screen now is made for the Nikon 50mm f1.4D, which is a 30-year-old lens, and it's quite representative of lenses made in the 1980s and 1990s. You can see that the contrast level of the lens, the global contrast level, only reaches about 70% when wide open. That lower contrast or a little bit foggy appearance of the image may be caused by using low quality plastic elements that do not have the same transmission as quality optical glass. And therefore, the contrast is a little bit squashed, it's a little bit reduced. Other factors that can contribute to this type of MTF chart are less than perfectly efficient coatings, and also an overuse of high refractive index glass that might hinder the contrast in some cases, especially when the lens is shot wide open. The next phenomenon is lowering of the sharpness or resolution pair of lines in the chart. That might be caused by spherical aberrations that affect the whole image circle. Spherical aberrations are a phenomenon, but that is caused by the inability of the lens to focus light that comes through the center of the lens and from the periphery of the lens on the same distance on the focal plane. Naturally, spherical aberrations improve a lot when you stop the lens down, because the increase of depth of field masks this inaccuracy in micro focusing. You may expect a serious improvement of the lens resolution as you stop it down, even as you stop it down a little bit. The next phenomenon is a sharp decline in the contrast of the lens, the global contrast of the lens, close to the image edges, which might be caused by field curvature, where the plane of focus is not quite flat, but a little bit convex. Light coming out of the lens at the periphery is focused a little bit closer than light coming through the center of the lens. This effect also diminishes quite fast as you stop the lens down, because the increased depth of field might mask it. The next phenomenon is peripheral reduction in contrast towards the edges of the frame. Now, this might be related to lateral chromatic aberration, where the focusing distance of light on the focal plane depends on spectral considerations. High energy light, like blue light, focuses a little bit closer than red light, which is low in energy, has a longer wavelengths. In practice, chromatic aberration appears as color fringing across high contrast areas in the image. And it mainly affects the periphery of the lens, because oblique light tends to suffer more than on-axis light. The lens is optimized to correct for the next aberration we can observe in an MTF chart is a separation between the axes. A separation between the axes on the resolution line means that the image might suffer some astigmatism, which is practically expressed in blurred edges or fine details. Unlike the aberrations we discussed before, astigmatism doesn't improve much by stopping the aperture down. So if we see a great separation of more than 10% of the overall contrast on the resolution line, we can confidently assume that resolution will not be perfect even at smaller apertures. A lens like this would not be very good in resolving fine details. A separation between the axes can occur also on the global contrast line. That happens usually closer to the edges of the frame. And practically it means that the bokeh is not expected to be quite perfect. It represents itself in out of focus specular highlights, getting an elongated shape rather than being perfectly round, which tends to happen at wide apertures. The appearance of out of focus surfaces, the loss of focus or loss of sharpness as related to the distance is a much more complex aspect of a lens. It depends on many things, like how spherical aberration is corrected and how the aperture blades are made, how many of them there are, and what the shape is. This specific phenomenon only relates to the geometry of the surface, to the gross shape of specular highlights. So it doesn't teach us too much about the characteristics of the bokeh. Now, let's have a look at three different lenses and explore their MTF charts. The lens on the left is a high-end modern lens made for mirrorless cameras. It has a contrast level, a global contrast level close to 1, and a resolution level of 0.7 to 0.8, or 70 to 80% across most of its projected image circle. This type of lenses was simply unheard of until about a decade ago. Before that, this level of correction was simply impossible. The accuracy in the production of aspherical elements was a little bit lacking. Nowadays, most of the lenses released into the wild comply to this high level of performance. The lens in the middle is still a modern lens made for mirrorless cameras. It's quite a fast 50mm prime, like the lens on the left is. But the manufacturers made a choice here to reduce the level of resolution to around 50 to 60% over most of the projected image circle, while the global contrast remains quite high, although there is a separation between the axes of the contrast line. The reduction in resolution in this lens can be attributed to the avoidance of extra low dispersion glass, which really increases the resolution of a lens. It makes the images made with that lens look quite bitey and clinical. However, the lens in the middle does not contain any ED glass. In other words, a hierarchy of contrast is maintained in this lens, where larger surfaces appear more contrasty than fine details. And that emulates the way our eyes work. And thus, this lens is expected to produce more true-to-life images. The chart on the right depicts the performance of an older lens. It's another 50mm fast prime, but it's of an older generation. You can see that both the contrast and the resolution of this lens are reduced. In fact, the resolution level of this lens never exceeds 50%, which makes it quite a soft rendering lens. Although its global contrast is quite good. There's quite a lot of astigmatism present. So this lens is not expected to get quite sharp as you stop it down. Each of those three lenses has its own characteristics. Let's take a look at what those lenses might be suitable for. With the lens on the left is quite clinical, quite bitey. So its level of accuracy is higher than the other two. As such, it might lend itself to reproduction, where you want a faithful representation of a two-dimensional object. It might lend itself to product photography, where you want to obtain an accurate description of a manufactured object. Man-made artifacts are have a simple geometry. They comprise different combinations of straight lines and curves. Simple surfaces in the geometric sense. Those types of lenses are very good at defining those fine edges typical to man-made objects. It is also a lens that might suit architectural photography that has the same straight lines and curves and arcs. And of course, these lenses are suitable for applications where some aggressive cropping is required, because even at a tight crop, they would still retain their edge definition, their sharp appearance. The lens on the right, which is a soft focus lens, might lend itself to portraiture, where you want the skin texture to be a little bit softer. It might lend itself to atmospheric photography, where you seek a lower level of global contrast and a softer look, and to artistic photography, where you don't want the viewer to concentrate on detail, but the overall mood of the photograph. The lens in the middle might be suitable for everything else. It's a hierarchy of contrast, which means it has a full contrast level, but its high frequency contrast is a little bit lower. Sharp details, small, tiny edges and details, while captured, are not overly accentuated. Such lenses lend themselves to three-dimensional scenes, where you want to emphasize the shapes of objects, the distances in the scene, the textures of surfaces. They are better suited, especially for living things, like people, like animals and plants. So I would argue that they are better in landscape photography, especially in natural landscapes, where you want to portray the distances and the structures in your scene. And of course, those lenses are good for general documentation, especially documentary photography as a specific genre, where you want to portray the gestalt or the experience of being in a place at a certain moment. The low level of astigmatism represented in the middle MTF chart suggests that this lens might be quite clinical when stopped down. You won't be able to really see a difference between the two lenses on the left hand at f5.6 or f8 and so on. However, older lenses that still had some separation between the axes at the high frequency levels baked into them do not improve that much as you stop them down. And they retain their contrast hierarchy even at smaller apertures. Arguably, those lenses would be better at portraying three-dimensional scenes or documentary photography than the modern lenses that do not have this astigmatism. In the past decade, there's been a big advancement in the manufacturing technology for aspherical lenses. Nowadays, it is possible to make more precise aspherical elements that eliminate a lot of the astigmatism baked into all the designs. When trying to shoot people in their real life environments using modern, very well corrected lens, you might get the impression that there is something missing. It's not easy to put your finger exactly on what is not right about those images. But to me, they lack a sense of life. Those scenarios are much better portrayed by lenses such as the one in the middle, where the contrast of fine details and edges is not that pronounced. So the scene, the larger context of the environment gets a higher contrast than the fine details. Natural geometry is quite messy. It has a fractal component where there's a hierarchy of scale. There's a repetition of the same structures at different scales. And it is important to maintain those scales in terms of contrast. Large scale details should get more attention than the very fine details. So the context of the scene is clearly portrayed in the image. This is part of the quality that makes an image true to life, more immersive, more readily understood by the viewer. I would like to argue that it doesn't matter which optical aberration causes the reduction in resolution, but the level of resolution, especially the hierarchy of resolution, the difference between the low frequency contrast and the high frequency contrast is crucial to the natural portrayal of scenes. In practical terms, you would want a lens with a global contrast level of around 90% or even higher than that. But the high frequency level should not really exceed around 70% over most of the area of the image. Alas, this type of optics are not really made anymore. There are some examples of such new lenses here and there, but generally the modern optical design has won. Lenses should look good on paper. They should have as close to perfect MTF charts. At least this is what the manufacturers are trying to do. This is what the market is thirsty for. Nice true-to-life lenses are becoming a glaring omission in the industry, in the market. I very much hope the void will be filled up with new lenses that have life in them. I think that will be all for today. I hope you found this video helpful to you. If you like the contents of those videos and wish to support my channel, please consider buying me a coffee. It's a nice gesture between gentlemen. You will find the link in the description below. So thank you for watching, and see you again soon.